What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Going Down a Rabbit Hole. And in this video, what I want to talk about is the ecological nature of NE. Most of the descriptions that you see around NE and all of the definitions online talk about NE from a very theoretical standpoint. They talk about how conceptual NE is and how it looks into the world of the imagination, and it sees all these possibilities, and it's always constantly generating ideas. And that's just one aspect of NE that people talk about. And the people who claim to be NE dominance, they don't talk about the other aspects of NE, which I think you can't really talk about unless you are someone who's actually experiencing it. And so I want to talk about the ecological side of NE and how I experience that in my day to day, which I think is honestly more of what you will experience in general than any other form of NE. Like the conceptual side of it is um, highly experienced through me too, and I'm always coming up with like ideas and ideating and thinking about different things and flipping ideas and seeing how things could be. And this is literally how I build a million business ideas. However, it's not just that. So first and foremost, anybody who's just talking about any through that lens is probably not an any user or probably not an any dom. I'm an NE Dom. It's obvious that I'm an NE Dom. It's obvious that I'm an NE Dom because of the things that I participate in and the things that I do in my day to day life. Now, my behavior, right? One could argue that cognitive functions are not behaviors, but I would argue that cognitive functions inform the behaviors that you have, the things that you do, and so on and so forth. So, first, let's talk about what uh, ecological even means. And basically what it means is it's basically concerned with the it's basically concerned with reality and a living organism's experience of their reality, right? That's basically um, what ecological means. Now, when people talk about any, they talk about any from the standpoint of being outside of reality and being into the conceptual theoretical world of the imagination, which still exists in the ecological side of things, but the ecological side is a lot more concrete because it exists within the world, right? And again, like if you're living the everyday life, this is probably how you will see the NE user um, interact with the world. So I think one of the greatest analogies when comparing any and also the ecological side of any two is being street smart. Have you ever been in a situation where you've been able to identify just off of a hunch the possibilities of everything that could go wrong and anticipate everything that can go wrong in an environment with a person within an event, right? And then make decisions based off of that, then you probably have an E. Because often at times when I was a kid, I was able to walk through neighborhoods and know if neighborhoods were good or bad, what could potentially happen based off of what I'm seeing in the environment and all of the um like potentialities that I could imagine in my mind. But even though I was imagining these in my mind, these ideas were about the real world. So one might say like this is a concrete experience of NE, even though it's technically not. It's still abstract, but it's abstract on realism, on the world itself, right? This is also why, like, if you're an ENTP and you feel like you are an empath, it's because NE is a cognitive function. A cognitive function is a process. A cognitive function is a process that human beings use as a preference to pay attention. What are you paying attention to? Your intuition, right, is paying attention to it. You have extroverted intuition, which means that extrovert means to pay attention to the object. Intuition means a sense of knowing without theoretical or without not theoretical, without logical reasoning, right? So the reason why any is expansive is because it generates into possibilities because it's constantly expanding. It moves towards the plurality. It moves towards the multiplicity. Whereas like introverted functions, for example, tend to unify and move towards singularity. And that's the difference in the nature. Now, when you are in ecological situations, it's easy for you to anticipate things that will happen in these specific instances. And so, like, for example, if you yell at someone, you can anticipate because of your NE that how this person could respond. This person could respond in the sense that they might get mad. They could respond depending on their culture that that's fine. They're used to that. They could respond in a sense of crying. They could respond in in another sense of like trying to attack you. It's all based off of the person, and also but the person isn't limited by the possibilities because we know that they could participate or partake in all of these possibilities. The possibilities are available to them. And so this makes you anticipatory and prepared in nature for how this person may respond to something that you did or something that you said. And imagine doing this every single day and basically doing this on steroids in every scenario. Like, you're driving a car, you anticipate what could happen if you make a turn a specific way. That's NE generating the ideas and the possibilities of what could happen in the real world. See, everybody talks about the world of technically it's the world of your imagination because it didn't happen yet and it's still abstract, but it's still based and grounded in reality. And when people talk about NE, they talk about NE in the sense that it is not grounded in reality, which is not necessarily true. NE can be a very practical tool for everyday utilization. And if you are an NE user and you feel like you have empathy, which a lot of people like to say that, oh, ENTPs are not empathetic and blah, 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 blah. That's not true. First of all, we have FE. What is FE? FE is a rational function that is a rational conscious function that involves thinking about other people's emotions, right? Now, obviously, you're thinking about other people's emotions, and in order for you to feel good, the other person has to feel good. So there's some charm and charisma behind FE. Actually, I associate FE with charm and charisma more than I associate FE with empathy. I think where you get empathetic as an ENTP is when you start to anticipate how someone might feel because you're thinking about how they might feel and you're creating all of these possibilities of how this person could feel on a given scenario and on a given situation. And in doing that, in going into the realm of the possibility, you start to emotionally connect because these ideas are coming from you, the subject, right? And there is a personal attachment to the idea, regardless of if you necessarily care about the idea or not. And by nature, as a human being, as an emotional creature, even though people like to say that, if you're an ENTP and you have TI, you have no FI, so you can't feel. It's not true. You probably think you can't feel because you don't focus your energy and attention on feelings. And I don't focus my energy and attention on feelings. So it's very seldom do I ever feel like I can feel something. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's true. There's a difference between it could just be a delusion that you're deluding yourself into thinking. But I say this to say that the nature of coming up with possibilities around the object, the person, you have FE, which is an objective function, which is a judging function on other people's feelings. And you have NE, which is intuition on objects, and a person is an object. And you're creating ideas about how this person might feel, which then can impact how you feel, right? Which this is why NEFE can feel like empathy regardless of if this is a diluted nature or not. It can feel like empathy because of the two things in combination with each other, right? People say, like, well, technically it can't happen because Annie is optimistic. Optimistic, not necessarily in the idea, optimistic in how often you use it. Um, so this is why, like, when I talk to people and I see people just talking about it from the standpoint of like, yeah, ideas and like like, yeah, I'm gonna come up with all these ideas, and all I think about is this, and this. Sometimes when I'm using any, I don't even come up with multiple ideas. Sometimes when I'm using any, I come up with one idea, and then I come up with ideas around that idea. This is why I think NE is best described not necessarily as just ideation, but anticipation. Anticipation is the perfect word because the anticipation of what something could be is the ideation. The anticipation of what could happen is the ideation. The anticipation of how someone else could feel is the ideation. So NE is a lot more practical than people think, and people who talk about it as if it is not practical, as if it does not have this aspect of it, as if it is only grounded. See, you can make an argument for NI. You could say NI is probably not as um like concrete as NE because NI basically what it does is it strips away everything and parses everything out to get to its most fundamental patterns because NI wants to know something. It wants to know it wants to basically predict a future outcome, right? It wants That's what it wants to do. And because it wants to do that, it has to strip everything down to the patterns. Otherwise, there will be lots of flaws in how NI works. It doesn't mean that NI can't be flawed, but it does mean that because it operates at the patternistic level, that what remains is extremely abstract. Whereas with NE, so that's why like a lot of times when you hear NI speakers, they speak in very, very abstract language. Versus me, for example, when you hear me speak, you can listen to me speak, and everything I'm saying is not that abstract. It's not as abstract as what you might anticipate it would be for a like another type, right? Another N type. The abstraction of the way that I speak is in the thought patterns of what does not exist, but not necessarily in the concepts of the patterns that are formed, if that makes sense. So because I speak in hypotheticals, that's why it's abstract. But at the same time, you don't really hear me speaking about things like, for example, how I don't know, Ren, Ren, um, Renwood. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, the person I'm talking about, his name is at INFJ. I also share these videos in his channel in his Discord. Um, I call him Ren, but his full name is Renaud Contini. Okay, so check that channel out, and you'll see the distinction between, for example, an NI Dom and me, and NE Dom. I think this is a very important distinction to make, though, because like people again assume that Annie is always going to be talking about things in the sense of you know like like the feelings, like feelings and emotion are like glass, and if you feelings and people are just bundles of glass because you can see right through them. You can see all of their feelings and their emotions that they bottle up, right? And because of that, you dis you it's easy to identify that because once you look past a concrete object of glass, even though it's clear, you extract the energy that you see, right? And this is who they really are. And now you have to get to the level. Now you have to break it down all the way in its fundamental parts to get to the point of the abyss to where their soul just evaporates. And when their soul evaporates, that's when you start to truly know who they are. Like, bro, I'm not gonna talk like that all the time, bro. I don't even talk like that. You know what I'm saying? Like how I talk is based off of being in circumstances and environments and adapting in a way that allows me to speak as such, right? I'm from New York. So it's just funny to me that you would ever think that any dom is always going to speak with this like like I'm feeling blue today, and the reason why I'm feeling blue is because the synergy of my spiritual energy is off with the universe, and in order for me to get back into it, I need to meditate so that I can conjure up these emotional, um these emotional balls of fire, like bro. You guys kill me. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next one.